Welcome to our SUU Grad and Online Friday Career Connections. This is a space where we get together and we learn about careers from different vantage points. We learn from experts and what they've experienced and what advice they might give us as we develop our own careers. Today, we're super excited to have Kit Chatham, who I'm not going to steal his thunder, but I'll just give you a few tidbits that have really fascinated me. Kit directs our music technology program, and so he brings a ton of experience. But as we've chatted in the past, I'm just fascinated by his journey and making a great living as a professional musician. And again, I don't want to steal his thunder, but his career with Cirque du Soleil. His work with Disney will be quite interesting to hear from, and then what he's doing in education. And you can see from his background, uh, he's got all the tools. So we're gonna turn the time over to Kit to kind of give us his story, and then we'll be doing a few snap polls like we've done in the past. Um, so be ready for that. And we'll wrap up at about 12:50 Utah time. And be mindful that Kit's in Vegas, so that would be 11:50 Kit's time. So Kit, tell us your story.
How's it going, everybody? First, thanks for having me here. I'm excited to share with you, and it's been a great journey so far being a part of the SU program more closely. And working with so many of you, so it's been great. I'm going to give you kind of the Reader's Digest version of what I've done, and I'm going to make this kind of interactive. So I'm going to go to here, make sure everyone can see this. So I've taken this from my drum and performance clinic, so I've kind of taken some things out. So this is what usually I'll ask the students, but hopefully some of you will get this reference coming up. So my name is Kit, but my real name is Christopher. My parents wanted to name me Christopher, but they did not want to call me Chris. So I wanted to clear up that misconception. A lot of people are like, oh, you're called Kit because you play the drums, and I'm like, no, my parents just didn't want to call me Chris. So getting to I'm going to work my way back before joining SUU. So in the past, I've been a part for 20 years. I was with Cirque du Soleil, a part of 7 different shows, and I was actually about to start my 8th show before the economy and everything. They ended up deciding to close it down, and then just serendipitously, it worked out so that I transitioned to my role at SUU as a director. Now, I did get my master's degree at SUU, so I'm going to show you little clips of some of the shows just to give you a taste of my makeup skills, because it's funny being on tour and having some of the most involved makeup on certain shows. They would actually ask me to demonstrate some of my makeup skills for actual production. This is actually from Drawn to Life. This is the show I did before joining or before coming to SUU. So I was in Florida. So this was a collaboration with Cirque du Soleil and Disney. That's me on stage working on, and you see the little teeter board act right there. I worked with many different facets so this is where I mostly lived in a lot of the shows. I'd just be in my own little world, kind of like in my room here, just playing drums. Usually when they got to the part of the show where I could take off my costume, you can see I'm just on a tank top and chilling out. But I did a lot of roles with band leading. I was an artist coach as well. I would train some of the artists to do either musical elements or actual movement elements in the show. So this is clips from one of my last shows as well. I was fortunate with Cirque to get a lot of stage time. And that comes from my background with a Broadway show called Blast. I was featured in that show. And and Cirque was great with the 4 creations. So I did 4 creations with Cirque. I did 7 shows, but 4 of those I actually was there from the very, very beginning. And they actually got my input to help develop acts. So this is like a little clip for me doing my stage table act. They wanted to do a little thing with hands on a table, but I was like, let's make it a little more fun. So let's add some of my stick tricks and stuff to that to make it. And unfortunately, I can't give you the audio. That it's I have to feed that. But with Cirque as well, I was a band leader. So this is a little video of me actually kind of calling the show. And you can see the technology that I'm using to help run the show while I'm playing drums. So you can see I'm wearing a microphone. I would actually watch the show and make sure that the music is in sync with the actions and go on stage. What's great about Cirque is that we're basically like a living and breathing soundtrack. So we had to change and evolve with, let's say that the artist missed a trick and they had to go back and do something. So we had to make sure not only we as the music could go back and jump it, but also all the technology, the backing tracks, and all the other stuff that we had could go along, be adaptable. So here's just some shots of the other shows I've done. Just give you a little snippet of my makeup skills. I actually came out to Vegas because of a Cirque show. Luckily, and I get into this with my students about having varied skills, making sure that you have a lot of colors in your crayon palette so that you can actually get work, especially in the music industry. So like I've been fortunate to be a percussionist and a drummer with Cirque, and a lot of the new shows that I've done with them was actually because they were like, getting two for the price of one. So that's one of those things where I really like to make sure that students understand, like, the more skills that you offer, the more valuable you are to your employer. This is when I was a lot younger. This was the Broadway show I did Blast, and another show I did on London's West End called Cyber Jam. I got to live there for a year. It was amazing living in London, especially at someone else's dime. And then my background, so I have I'm going to get away so you can actually see me talk. So my background, basically, as soon as I graduated from my undergrad, I stepped out the door touring. So I joined that Broadway show Blast, and I've pretty much been on the move ever since settling down. This is probably the first time I've going to be stationary for a long period of time. Now, for the show I did in Florida, I was there for 4 years, so I was kind of stationary, but I was also back and forth to Vegas. And even when I came out here to Vegas, I was still doing a bit of touring and a different playing. But now it's nice. I'm a little more rooted and grounded here in Vegas. And I'm sorry, I'm looking at my visuals, making sure I still got everything. Tad, I had a clip queued up for you, showing you some, because I know you lived in Japan playing some taiko. I'm going to see if I can find it real quick.
Can you do taiko?
Yeah, did I not tell you that? Like, so here, let me jump back to. Let me.
That's physically intense.
So again, this is a part of my. Usually, when I go do a drum clinic, I can't take all of my toys and my drums with me, so I'll usually show a little bit. So that's me playing in my front room, playing one of the taikos I have. What's
That's
great
amazing.
about taiko too is like, and one of the things, not to get super off topic, it's like one of the big things I teach with my students is that playing drums it's so important to vocalize what you play, because we play an instrument that you basically, it's like with James Brown, you hit it and you quit it, it's done. So what's great about a lot of with Japanese playing, you actually vocalize the space, don sit don. So it's a really cool art form. I was fortunate in my travels with Cirque that all over the world that I spent a lot of time in Japan. So in fact, I think I told Tad my whole sleeve over here is actually traditional tabori, it's actually the Japanese style. So I would sit there for hours for 6 months every week. I loved the culture. So yeah, I studied with Amenajaku Taiko out of Tokyo, and it was great. Especially Asako Kajiyama was the main guy who taught me. But yeah, it was great. I mean, just that style. It's such physical and get in shape. I was always impressed with the guys and gals who were playing. Like their lats were like just super huge and like just super physical in shape. So yeah, that's one of my fun instruments, because it's more visual and athletic as well. I think that covers. So yeah, to kind of get to again back to those varied skills. While I was touring, so my undergraduate is actually in music education, and I think that had to do with, one, I was really passionate about teaching, but I also wanted to make sure that I had a job when I stepped out of college, because you never know with performing what's going to happen. And even through my career, there's been times when shows would just cancel, and then you're like, what am I going to do? What am I going to lean on? So what's my next step? So yeah, I got my degree in music education. My wife's actually a music educator here in Las Vegas, Nevada. She teaches. That's where we met. We were both in the freshman theory class and marching band, the Red Coat marching band. So we did the music education platform. So yeah, it was tough because I was still gigging while I was in undergrad, performing every night. I was in Athens, Georgia, which was hard to make a 7 a.m. theory class, especially when they changed it to where you only had 5 absences and you were dropped. So like I really had to keep on my toes there. But that allowed me also, and even while in college, I taught the Red Coat band. I taught the university band, arranged, and I composed. I've been composing since I was in high school. So even when I was with Blast and Cirque, I was writing shows for a group called WGI. I was heavily involved in arranging and composing for high schools. And even when I was performing, I was working with Finale, which is a software who rest in peace because they're no longer around. But they were a big company. So my books that I wrote 6 books on percussion, and they're actually published by Hal Leonard. I wrote them with Finale and Smart Music. So I've been very passionate about keeping that going. Now, I also, since I was in college and before that, I was heavily involved in the recording industry and recording. That was back in a time when we didn't have what's called samples. So what you'll hear a lot of times, you'll hear like people will be playing MIDI, and they're actually triggering sounds. Back then, when I was hired in the studio to play whatever, that wasn't. It was just getting started. I remember being at Atlanta Institute of Music one day, and Randy Hexter was a guy who showed me some of the first samples. I was like, well, this is crazy. And I was like, well, I might never play, triangle on a jingle ever again because when you can just actually have it play on a keyboard. So I've seen how the industry has also like completely changed over the past 25 years to that. So growing up in a studio, that's also been one of my favorite spots. I was fortunate to record in a lot of the studios in Atlanta, even Capricorn Studios in Macon, which I thought they tore down to make a parking lot, but it turns out it's still around. I think there's a university, Mercer University, has taken it, and they're using it again now. So I was super happy to hear that. It was such a historic. It was the Allman Brothers studio in Macon. So yeah, I think I just covered a lot. I don't know if I hit that 10-minute mark, Tad, or not, but
No,
I probably forgot a few things here and there. But yeah, I apologize for my rambling.
no, that to me that's fascinating. Tell me, you said you graduated college and then you just started touring. That didn't happen magically, and I'm sure there's a lot of musicians or people with music backgrounds who would love to do what you've done. How did you make that happen? How did you didn't magically start touring. How did you make
No.
that connection?
So at that point, I was getting ready for grad school. So I had already sent off all my stuff to North Texas, Miami. Those were the 2 schools I had nailed it down to. And I actually kind of did a verbal agreement from University of Miami. And it was one of those things. I had my tape and everything ready. I had some friends say, "Hey, there's this opportunity with a show called Blast. You should send them their video, send them a video." So I did, and it got to the point where I got the response. They're like, "Hey, we'd love for you to join the cast. Come meet us." And we did development at Walt Disney World in Orlando. So yeah, it's one of those things too where like I had a 6 month like period before I jumped onto that tour. So I'd already been accepted. So I was like, all right, now I have 6 months. What am I going to do? Well, fortunately, I took that music education degree and I taught for as a long-term music sub for six months in the same Fulton County where my wife was teaching. It was 4th and 5th grade band, so it was scary. But again, I felt like I was prepared. Teaching young kids their first time holding an instrument. Demonstrating flute. Demonstrating clarinet is all those things that I learned when I was doing my music methods. So yeah, so it was a persistence. I was already putting myself out there, and like for grad school and different types of things. So I wanted to make sure. So it just happened that opening occurred, and then from there, it basically I did a show with them for the Broadway show, Blast for 3.5 years, and then they were like kind of took the highlighted featured people out of that show to create a brand new show, which was Cyberjam Blast 2, which was in London. So, and as soon as that finished up, I knew we had an end date. So right now, I think Les Mis is in the theater that we were in. It was Queen's Theater in London. And that was the other thing. While I was performing, and even through my circuit years, I was always putting stuff out there for other shows and for everything. So I never stopped. I wanted to make sure that was going. What are all the venues, open? And I never wanted to. There have been 2 times when I had to leave a show because it was closed, and that was Cyberjam and Viva Elvis because they just got canceled. And it was one of those things where like, okay, what am I going to do now? But I usually don't like to leave a show until I have another show in my pocket. But the nature of the business is that's not always a reality.
So, do you sign a contract for the entire length of that show? Are you committed until the show closes?
So usually when you start a creation of a show, you'll sign like initial like 2-year contract, and then after that contract, depending on the show and the company, Like for instance, with Cirque back in the day, it was basically a renegotiation. So I remember I learned a lot from then the president of the AFM. His name was Ray Hare. He negotiated my second contract with Cirque. So he taught me a lot about negotiating. And then from there, like I started negotiating a lot more on my own to the point now where I just negotiate and I'll have like legal people look over things just to make sure it's I'm okay. But yeah, usually it's 2 years, and then you'll renegotiate each year. But now it's like more of like a renewal. So you'll say, okay, I'm going to just renew, and you grow with that rate. It's not like we would actually sit in a room and like renegotiate. Now it's just like a basic renewal. Other shows, the length is, sometimes they'll have like with Blast, it was like a 1 year, 1 year, 1 year as well. But yeah, it just all depends on the company. With Blast, it was a non-equity show, so it was not union. With Cirque, I had to be in the union for touring in the U.S. Internationally, I did not have to be in the union. So that was another lot of things I had to learn. I was a member of the union in the Atlanta AFM, America. Um, yeah, Atlanta, started Atlanta, then I moved it to Vegas. I'm currently not in the union because there's no benefit for me to be in it right now. So I tell students like if there's a way you can just um, what is it? What is it called? Resign in good standing so that you can still keep that. And because my pension is through Canada, through the AFM. So
Wow. So how does it work today? So you sent in a tape. I'm assuming, like, if you were a young musician today, how would you get a gig?
well, with Blast it was a tape. With Cirque, I actually had to go and actually do a live audition,
Oh, you did.
which I prefer because it's definitely now knowing a lot about music editing and video editing. It's really easy to kind of fudge some things. But
Uh,
once you're in a live setting like one on one, it's you really know what's up and you hear the reality of things. But there's still a lot of happening that's just usually just tape. A lot of times there'll be tape well for the initial audition, and then they'll get a few like 3 to 5 candidates they'll bring in for a live audition to kind of see who they want. And then it's also it's like it's so important because there's so many talented musicians out there. You have to be good to work with. And I tell people that's so important. You kind of have to be just a good person and be able to work with each other because there's so many like great musicians out there that you can easily be replaced a lot of times. So if you're an amazing musician and you're kind of a not so nice person, you might not last very long. So
yeah, interesting. We're going to do a quick snap poll right now. How many have you been to a Cirque du Soleil show? If you'll put that in the chat. And where did you see it? Was it in Montreal? Was it in Vegas? Was it somewhere else? If you'll put there. I unfortunately I tried to go see a show in Montreal, but we couldn't get in. Oh wow. Multiple in Vegas, El Paso, Texas,
I got to pull this up.
Arizona, several in Vegas. I have not been to one. Vegas, Florida, California. Wow. Someone in Vegas, Vegas. I've
So
only seen recordings.
there's a small chance you see me.
Yeah. Wow. So tell us, let's talk about the Cirque du Soleil chapter. How did you get in? How was the experience? And how is Cirque du Soleil doing now? They've been wildly successful. But from what someone who's been on the inside, tell us a little bit about their business model, how it works, and how you enjoyed working for them.
Now, like I said, for me, like I sent in my materials through tape. I got invited to come do a live audition. From there, it was just a matter of like, is there a position to fill? Um, Cirque being such a big company, they have a lot of existing shows and they do a lot of creations. Back then, they were pumping out a show like at least every year, every 2 years, and then there was a stint where they were doing a lot. It has slowed down, and a lot of that has to do with the economy. And just the guys that one thing you'll learn about me, I'm pretty transparent on things. So the show that I was supposed to do right before accepting the job at SUU, it was mainly because of the economy. They'd already spent, I want to say like close to $8 million on the show. They'd already bought a bunch of my gear. They already bought a custom drum out of Japan for me. So a lot of stuff was based on that, and they just ended up pulling the plug and trying to fill it with other things. Also, like I was supposed to go to Saudi Arabia here next month for a show with them. It was a special event show. I was in talks with doing that. And it's just because of the economy and the situation. So, I mean, there's, I can't speak on a lot of that right now, but they're definitely feeling the economy like most places are. In terms of shows, I know in Vegas, the tourism at one point was down by 12%. So a lot of the shows, once they get up and running and they pay off their initial production cost, they can run shows and cover their production costs with 25 to 30% house.
Mm.
So so that they can live. It doesn't have to be completely full. I honestly I haven't seen the show here in town for a while. Lease over. What was the last one I saw? It was just Love. I saw Love before it closed. And Love closed because the casino. So Cirque has a relationship with MGM. Love, the Beatles' Love show was in the Mirage, and since Hard Rock bought it, they did have the ability to keep the show if they wanted, because they do have an agreement where, like Treasure Island, I don't know if you guys know the casino Treasure Island has Mystere. Treasure Island was once owned by MGM. It was sold to someone else. They're still running it because of that agreement. But Mirage just ended up like, oh, we don't want the show. We want to just go ahead and close it. So, I've experienced a lot of changes through especially Cirque throughout the years. So when I first joined Cirque, my first show was Corteo back in 2004. Show opened in 2005. It was to a point where it was just a big artist community. So like all of us lived together. Now we were in like corporate apartments, but like we were on site in a tent all day long rehearsing. We became a close family. Sometimes we had tensions like families too sometimes, but it was a close knit. Even to the point where artists, they had families on stage. I mean, they have families that, sorry, not on stage. They had families that they brought on tour with them. So like I was teaching music to the kids in the school. So we actually had school. There's a cafeteria that fed us. So through the years and through like just, especially when you hit like the 2008, 2010 housing, then COVID, a lot of things were changed. And they also went through a big process of Guy Laliberté, who originally owned the company, was one of the founders and creators of the show. I think it was 2016 or around then, he sold to an investment group, and so he gave, I want to say either 10% to the Quebecois government, because Quebec funded Cirque at the very beginning, so he kind of gave back to them. They gave them 10%. Guy kept 20%. I think it was a conglomerate from China and somewhere else. I can't remember exactly. I want to say TPG, but I could be completely wrong. And things started changing then a little bit, because it felt like things like were going more corporate. I'm not in those big meetings, so I don't see that. All the things that I do, it just has to do more with the artists. But yeah, you could kind of just see how things like the school went away. Touring families and paying for a lot of that stuff kind of changed. But that happened pretty much throughout the industry as well. So it's not just Cirque; it was everybody. I also was a part of Cirque in the beginning, where we played and we didn't have like really backing tracks. We played everything live. So we even
Wow.
had to evolve our music as we got into more like, instead of having 8 or 9 musicians, you're getting down to like a 5 musicians with tracks. So that developed over time, and to a point where like, the technology was able to be like flow with the show, so that you could have that, like I said, if an artist, needed more time to prep for a jump, or like they missed the jump or missed the catch or anything like that, having that music so that it can with an entire live band, you can do it pretty easily. Just go, hey, we're going back to this 3/4, and then you go back. But when you're dealing with backing tracks and things that have to sync with everything else, so you have to really make sure everything's programmed, everything's synced, everything's thought of well ahead of time. So as a band leader, when I was calling the show, I was playing drums, so I would actually pre-record my calls so that I would trigger the call and trigger something that basically a track that cues where to go in the music, and I would dial it in. So it was basically a little bit of like this and going on and being able to, but it was fun. It was always a challenge, because you never know what was going to happen with live shows like that. And that was what's unique about with Cirque. I do a ton of playing now, where it's not so much like having to lock the visual. You're just, just playing. And there'll be a lot of times that I'm playing like, am I not am I out of Coke Zero at home? Do I need to pick? I'm not thinking about. I'm like, yeah, I think I need to on the way home. I need to pick up some Coke. Sorry, I have a two of my addictions are Coke Zero and peanut butter. Two things I don't have. Like I don't go a day without.
So Kit, tell us that's really interesting. Tell us how is AI going to impact your industry? Are you worried about AI in the music industry, or not really?
I am and I'm not. I don't think AI is ever going to replace live shows. You'll I just there's that element of going to see a show, even if you're using AI to help create the show.
Yeah.
Like the Eagles are. I was just talking to a buddy of mine who's going to see Eagles, and I have a one close friend of mine who worked with another show me. He's actually the audio playback engineer. Um, yeah, you can't replace that, but you can use it to enhance, like with visuals and stuff like that. I just don't think that's ever going to change. Now, for me, I do have an ethical issue with certain things. I do use AI. I tell the students I have Grammarly and I use ChatGPT to go over my emails just to make sure I sound good. And I'm like, just to make sure, okay, how's everything go? It's like, I tell them it's like the Frank's Red Hot sauce. I put it on everything. I have it on every device just to make sure and double check. Um, but I, I kind of feel like in music, one, I know like with the film industry, they're usually ahead of the music industry. So I know with copyrights, because we don't know what's in the black box of what AI puts out, where they get the content from, which is mostly copyrighted, and how it generates it and puts it out. So I think what's going to probably happen is like with copyrights, and I don't know if that's going to be through the AFM, the American Federation of Musicians, or who's going to do that, but to make sure that they'll keep those rights. I do like AI to enhance things, but I feel like there's just something like with the arts, there's just something organic with creating, and that you can't replace with AI. And I've had discussions with students where like, well, I'm writing a song, and then I just get to that point where like I just have this big block, and I'm going to use AI to help me get over that writer's block or composer's block. And I was like, well, then that's the part of the process, that struggle and like everything that you go through trying to find that next melody or that next chord. That's part of your journey. And if you give it to AI, it's not you, it's not yours. So that's one of those things I'm still learning about. That was another reason why, like for our first supersonic session, we had AI music production, just to learn a little bit more about it and how it might affect us. It's yeah, it's one of those things where like we're just gonna keep having to navigate those waters. But with most things in the arts, I just feel like it's not. It might have a little effect, but I think just like with going back to listening to vinyl, I think there's always going to be something that's true and organic about finding like music, and definitely going to see it live. I don't think that'll ever be replaced.
Yeah, and
With
I
the
think you're right.
holograms or anything like that. I don't think that's ever going to happen.
Yeah, the human experience, you can't replicate it through AI.
Yeah,
We've got a question from John who wanted to know if you did work on the Beatles Love show.
I did not work on the show. What I can give you some interesting stories about the show though. So I did work with I did get to meet George Martin and Giles Martin because they came and saw Corteo, because Corteo was basically the same stage structure where you had audience on both sides of the stage and you had two channels, which was talking about all of us in the band. It was in Montreal. We were freaking out, to meet these two legends. I mean, it was amazing. So they actually did remaster the music. All of the music they're all tracks. There were no live band in that show, so it was all tracks, all remastered, and it was in a vault like 3 stories down. It was like a fingerprint, and like the music was locked down where you couldn't get to it, and it was nuts. There was a chance where I was going to be audio playback engineer when Viva Elvis closed. That I went over and talked to them, and I was like, yeah, I'm just a performer. I don't want to sit there and behind the scenes and press play. So there was a chance, but it's a yeah, it was a great show. And it really stinks that it's no longer around. They did do some really cool things and how they manipulated different types of songs and put them together, the remastering and mixing of things. I'm Beatles are my favorite band of all time. They're not my favorite rock and roll band. I tell people like Beatles are my favorite band. Led Zeppelin's my favorite rock band of all time. So it's like one of those things. But yeah, great show. Yeah, the music. What else was I going to say about that show? Yeah, it's so crazy that like the tracks were so on guard and so in a vault that like even the computers that housed them were down in that like vault. and only certain people had access to them.
Wow. So you're a performer first, but you also do composing, right?
Oh yeah, of course. So
How,
oh yeah, I did skip because you did point out the Disney. So like I've it's one of those things I've been doing since high school, but at various levels. Um, the show that I did for Disney opened in November. It's called. I can now tell you the name of it because the NDA and it's opened. So it was called Sounds of Wakanda, and it was basically based off the music of Black Panther, and which was cool because they sent me the scores, the original scores. The show is it's a 30-minute show. I would say 90% of it is actually my own compositions, and some of the stuff like dee da 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 I took from the Black Panther, the main themes. Of course, I had to have it. So I've done work with various things like Hugh Packer and so commercial and even corporate type stuff. Whenever it happens, and that's one of those things where I've told this probably so many times, and I'm sure if like whoever hears this student wise is going to get tired of hearing it, but this is why networking and like one being a cool person or trying to be a cool person, I try networking and being hungry, humble, and honest. That plays a big because like I literally got a call from a buddy from back in college, and I have we talked a year, but it's like 25 years. And he was like, "Hey, Kit, would you be interested in composing a show for Disney?" And I was like, "Yeah, for sure." I mean, so what do I need to do? I can send my EPK. I can see all my like my portfolio. What do you need? He's like, "Oh no, you've already got the gig. I've already shared your stuff." And I was like, "Now all you gotta do is just negotiate." So I tell people it's so important, just like that building a music community, networking with people. It's you never know when it's gonna like pan out, and it's happened so many times with me. Like even like with HP, yeah. So it's crazy.
wow. Um, okay, snap poll. Who's been on a Disney cruise? And has anybody heard the Sounds of Wakanda? If you did.
It's on the Destiny, the newest ship, the Destiny.
Okay.
Because I think it's a very heavily Marvel themed show.
Anybody been on a Disney cruise? I have not.
I have not either.
Yes.
I'm kind of scared too. I don't know.
Oh, oh yeah, Taylor worked at Disney World. Okay.
Oh yeah,
Norwegian. No Disney yet.
yeah.
Anyway, someone wanted to know please describe networking in the performance industry, and I would even say the music industry. Is it different in the performance or music industry or community, or is networking
It's
regardless of the industry?
there are various levels to it because I still think there's kind of like a boots on the ground part to it where people need to actually like for performance. Like, so we'll get into like other areas, but like for performance, people actually really need to like see you play. Like you can see you being play like so you can be seen played on Instagram or things like that. But I still think like when people see you in your natural element, there's something to say. So I tell a lot of my students, hey, get out in your community, see where the local jams are. Go and meet people. That's just that. Hey, I'm in town. I'm a player. Just to build those relationships there. And there's a lot of online communities where you can, in terms of other parts of the industry, where you can start making like there's like composer groups in different areas. There's the national composer groups. There's so much of that out there as well that you just getting on forums and meeting and sharing your music. Um, Other things for studio, if you're going to be a studio like engineer or getting into that, it's great to know where your local studios are, who's actually the head engineer there. Maybe you can go offer to help out. Get build that relationship so you can build like kind of uh, like a mentorship, like a apprenticeship almost as well. There are different avenues there, but you just want to meet as many people and the more because a lot of my gigs were all through people seeing me on stage in terms of performance. My composition stuff was again like through people who've heard my stuff and also who I've connected with through in the past and all my connections. And that was the other thing too. Like whenever I travel around the world, I kept studying. That's why I tell students I'm like I'm one of those people like I'm going to keep learning until I die, and I want to keep building my skills. So that is also a great avenue for you to go. And so like when I was in Atlanta before going on tour, I would go sub for one of my teachers. So then you're building that network of who you study with. They're like, oh, my student can fill out that, or like, hey, I know that guy's done mixing for me on an album, or he worked with me on that. He'd be great. He can do that. So it's all those moments that you can take advantage of meeting people, and every walks of everywhere, every walks of life. I would jump on it, and it's hard for me too because I'm somewhat of an introvert. When I'm on stage, I feel like I don't have this pressure, but I was telling Tad like I get to the point where like with I have dyslexia and I've also have cluttering, so I like when I get excited, I'll like skip words and like so that's one of those things where like I have sometimes awkwardness. I'm pretty awkward in social settings for sure. So it's just one of those things where I've like had a battle throughout life to be like, you know what, I want to do this, but I am a master of Houdining and out of a social event. Or-
Well,
so
my conversations with you, I haven't found you awkward. I found you just fascinating. So Kit, so you are a performer, composer, and now you're in the studio. You got the technology piece. Was that intentional to gain those skill sets, or was it just you followed your interests?
yeah, because I for me a lot of it the practical skills like when so just to give you guys a backstory, I was just about to premiere or the show in Disney. It was at Disney Springs with Cirque and Disney. We were 2 weeks away from opening before COVID. So next thing you know, it's March, what I think what 20th or something like that. We're in a big meeting in the theater, and then they're announcing, hey, we're putting us on hold for 2 weeks. Of course, those 2 weeks ended up being a year and a half. Fortunate for a lot of us, that we were on retainer the entire time. And for me, like my wife was like, she's not a hermit like me. Like she was there like a week without, like, she's like, I can't deal without any human like contact, or so I need you to fly back now. Because we thought that, maybe there's going to be 2 weeks, maybe it's going to be a month. Who knows how long this is going to last. So I was literally on a flight that night. I flew to Vegas. And while I was home in Vegas, I was like, okay, there's, what's happening? Everything's shut down. So I was like, what am I going to do? So just looking around, perusing online, and I found SUU. I found the online Masters in Music Technology program, and I was like, oh, this would be a great opportunity because like I was gearing to do that after when I graduated with my undergrad, but I jumped on tour and was performing the whole time. And I was like, this looks great too because like I've been heavily involved in music tech, in studio, and recording and doing all my own stuff. I felt like I was performing for 30 years at that time, 25 years. I don't need a degree in music performance. I got that. I'm good. And I have a degree in music education. I'm good. And I was like, I think this is one of those things that would just add validity to me, on my resume, and also help me maybe learn some new skills along the way. So that's when I decided, I was like, oh, you know what, dude, at the time it was Dr. Meredith was the director. I had a nice one-on-one call with him, and I was like, yeah, I would love to do this. Tell me a little bit more about the program. And from there, it was just like, bam, I hit it running. I was going to try to finish it as fast as I could. I think because I kept messaging my company manager, and I was like, hey, are we going back? When are we going back? Because I can take 2 courses, or maybe I'll try to take 3 courses to get through this program really quickly. So I ended up getting my master's through COVID, which was great because it also, again, led me to where I am now. As soon as I graduated, I started doing adjunct with the university here and there. And at that time, it was the director before me. So yeah, it just ended up being great. So it was one of those things where like, most of the skills in the program, like through most of our students, it's just refining because I knew a lot about it. I'd already been doing it professionally, but it's just again adding that validity to it. Getting a little more detail or maybe refinement. And the biggest thing too is like working with the instructors. Getting that information from them. I mean, I tell people like we have some amazing instructors. Everyone in our program has industry experience and they're involved in the industry, which is huge for me and for all of us, so that we're actually helping students. That's my main goal, is to help students step out the door and be closer to having that potential full-time career gig. So yeah, well, for instance, Brian, Professor Bolin has been in the studio for 30 plus years, I think, and it's like his resume is stacked. We have, Professor Riola, who's also like Michael Riola, who's doing amazing things with film. Chris Renna, who is it's funny. I'll tell you guys a quick story. Chris Renna, who's one of our teachers in the studio track emphasis, he was the original drummer for Nine Inch Nails, and I remember when I got hired, I was going around having one-on-one chats with all the adjunct faculty, and I was like, ah. So he's like, hey kid, let me tell you a little about you. And I was like, so Chris Verena, multiple Grammy in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, original drummer for Nine Inch Nails. And I was just laughing. I was like, Chris, you don't have to tell me anything. I was playing March of the Pigs in high school. You know, when you were out with Nine Inch Nails, like playing along, it's like I'm like we're good. And he's what's great too is like a super humble guy, and that's the great thing about like all the faculty in the MMMT program is like everyone's super chill, super great to work with, and we're all focused about trying to do what's best for the program, which was mostly what's best for the students.
So you've been a student and now you're the faculty director. What would you say makes the SUU MMMT program different or unique?
Um, in terms of, like I can't compare into like other places out there. I will say, looking around again, it's like we have this. I want to almost say like a boutique experience because we have such an amazing faculty to offer. You know, but it's at a small pace, so there's a lot more individual. Like you won't have classes that are massively filled. We have a lot of trying to do one-on-one. One thing from like I know from when I was a student to now, what we're really trying to do a lot more of is having more of an interactive teaching experience, being online, having more of an active learning experience, trying to do more video dialogue, having more like even if it's like Zoom sessions here and there, not mandatory but optional Zoom sessions, giving video feedback so that students don't feel like they're isolated behind the screen and they don't know who their teacher is and never heard. So that's something that we're continuing to work on and something that is a mission for me. That's one of those things that we're it was already changing to that before I stepped in, but it was of course I was already involved in the program, so it was actually just want a continual move. But yeah, I mean the only thing that we've continued to do is we continue to move with the industry and we continue to like find like what content do we need to make sure that students have stepping out the door, and a lot of it with audio is just you just really pounding the fundamentals, knowing the fundamentals of music, of how things work, you know, technology and like everything in your computer, things can change, but it's still knowing the fundamentals of music and sound and that we still focus on. So it's just the tools are changing, but the concepts are kind of the same.
Yeah. Yeah,
And so but it's crazy like how things are developing.
I agree. And the thing I love about SUU, we do have a strong tradition in the music. I mean, clear back when we were started in 1897, there was a strong tradition of music in this area. So I love that we're benefiting from that. Okay, we've got a question that came up. What is some of the soundest advice you would give to a young person who loves performing and is trying to decide what direction to pursue with a career? What is a requirement for them to be successful in a performance career?
Well, in the performance career, you have to really first make sure that you're refining your art. You always have to make sure that what you're presenting, your quality, is quality. So it's one of those things where like I play all the time, and my wife hates that, but it's just one of the even when I'm not playing, I'm like think, but it's just one of those putting in the hard work. That's first and foremost. You got to make sure that, and you're being honest with yourself that what I'm doing is comparable to like someone who's in what I want to do. You know, all right, you got to make sure like, well, I'm not quite playing it like that. So you got to be honest with yourself. You got to be humble and like, all right, maybe I need to spend more time in the in the practice room. Here's the other thing that I like to tell students. There's a thing in music where you can have a career in music or you can have a passion or a hobby in music. Now, if I want to make, so I grew up, my parents wanted me to be an orchestral percussionist. Now, I got into world percussion at a very, very early age because my brother was quite a bit older than me and he was a percussionist and he was in college when I was in middle school. So I started learning baron and congas and djembe and going to African dance classes and stuff at a young age. But like, so like, one of those things is that, knowing like what's going to make you money and what's not going to like what's just going to be a hobby. So I also being like studying orchestral stuff and studying a lot of marimba and studying a lot of orchestral stuff. I got to the point realizing that there's a small niche of to make money doing that. Only the elite. I mean, think about percussionists. There's usually only three in an orchestra, and usually only two, and they'll hire people in and out to sub. So there's a very small lane for that. Being paid to play marimba doesn't happen. And I love marimba. And I have a vibes downstairs, and I'm like, but I understand like that. Is that going to stop me from playing it? No. But I just understand like if I want to make money in a career, maybe I don't focus so much time on that, and I'll spend more time on the things that will. For instance, for me being a drummer percussionist, spending more time on drum set, spending more time on commercial world percussion, spending more time on things like being able to read melodic instruments so that I can sit down and play. Knowing and prioritizing your time for that is huge. Because I do a lot of work with clinics where I'll go teach, and there's like a cyclical nature where the teacher in his undergrad really focused on marimba, and then they went and got masters, and now they got their doctorate, and now they're teaching at a university marimba, but that's the only kind of space for that, So it's making sure that you know where things are going to actually benefit you financially. Now, for me, I've gotten hired a lot with Cirque and other places because, again, I play drums. I've been playing drum set since I was a little kid. I play world percussion, so they're getting two for the price of one. So whenever they hire me, especially for Cirque creation, that made me valuable for that. So I tell people, spend more time. Like, if you know that this is what you want to do for a living, all right, where is the money? And then put your time in that. Then I would also say, getting back to like studying with people in those chairs, they are already done all that networking. So you're basically just branching off of their networking in terms of performance. And they'll either hire you for if they can't do a gig, you can do a gig. Or if they can suggest you for another gig because they're doing a full-time gig over here. Hey, no, you should check out my student. He would be great for that. He can play all that. So that's another way. It's tough. And people don't understand how tough it is. There's a lot but getting back to, you also want to be, we call it in the music industry, someone that you can sit on a tour bus with. You want to be cool, and you want to be like someone that you can work with for a long time. And because I can't tell you how many people I've seen in and out the door in shows because they just you weren't able to work with. So I think I covered it. Yeah. I think you're muted, Tad.
Sorry, I'm on mute. Now I'm back. We've got a few minutes left, but Seth had a question about mentoring. How important was it for you to have a mentor, and how does that work vis-a-vis just basic networking?
It's crazy for me because I had a weird path. So I grew up in Atlanta, and my dad was a preacher. My mom was a music minister. So I grew up with music all my life. But when we moved from Atlanta right when I was in high school, like the beginning of high school. So I really was mostly self-taught after that's preliminary stuff that I got so I didn't have that kind of just percussion mentor. So that's one of those things for me that I had to learn and go through and grudge and figure out things on my own where I didn't have someone. And I would watch a lot to age me. I'd watch a lot of VHS cassettes and watching, Buddy Rich. How does he do this? I was watching, John Bonham, how does he play this? Neil Peart, like all these players are like, Giovanni Hidalgo, how's he playing this stuff? So I would have to study that. So I didn't quite have a mentor. But now that I'm in the chair and I'm mentoring my students, I'm telling them, look, I had a student yesterday, and I was like, Johnny, if I wish I had a teacher to tell me this stuff now, as opposed to me figuring out in college, you're 15. I'm like, and you're doing it well. These are all things that I had to like figure it out on my own. I'm like, oh, okay. And when I got to college, I did have a really great professor, Dr. Tony McCutcheon, but he basically didn't put a leash on me and let me just do anything that I wanted to. So my lessons with him were just like discussions on like, what are you doing? Because I was studying a lot of world percussion that wasn't being taught. Back in the day when I was in college, world percussion and a lot of that stuff was very, very small. There wasn't a world, like it wasn't as huge as it is right now. So I had to go out and study with other people. So, but he was a great mentor in terms of letting me have that ability to not restrict me to be like, no, you need to play this, and this, and this in this studio. And he would and it was great. We would literally sit down and be like, "Hey, what are you doing in your jury, or what are you going to do in your recital? I haven't picked it out yet. What are you studying right now? I'm studying this, this, and this." And we would just have the discussion. So he was great for me. So it again, not having a leash on me and allowing me to go and pursue all that other stuff was huge. So I would say like having a mentor, it was great if you can find it. Like unfortunately, I wish I would have had one when I was in high school and not. We moved to the sticks and there was nothing there. I even tell people like the city that I lived in there, and they're like, "Where's that?" And I have to go like 2 cities over. Like, oh, by Macon, or it's one of those things. So,
All
but yeah,
right. Hey, in the last minute we have, what career advice would you give someone that's just starting in the music or performance arena? What would you tell them and how to best manage their career?
I I mean, definitely again, practice, get your skills up, work on that. Find the right place for you to thrive, and find the right person to study with to thrive. Um, I've studied with a lot of people. There's some people I would say I'd never study with ever again, but they taught me a lot of things that of like just how they would do things. So yeah, I would definitely get with the right people to get you going. Um, in terms of it's just, if it's performance, it's definitely finding the right school, the right fit, and finding the right culture. Like for me, I was in Athens, so I knew that band culture of like who I played with and helped develop. So I mean, that kind of helped me develop my chops and my calluses or playing live. That's a huge thing too about being a performer. We rely so much on technologies these days to correct what we do. To be a live performer, you have to be able to do it consistently at a high quality level.
Mhm.
So that gets back to being able just to make sure you hone in your art, because you're not in the studio. You're not going to be able to go back and fix things. You're going to have to be able to nail it and then nail it every time. I tell my students, you got to be like 98% every time. We're human. Things are going to happen. You're going to come in and like, let's say just I had 2 cups of coffee and I might be jonesing when I'm playing a show, or I might come in, I don't feel well. So, but I still need to make sure that I'm 90% there, and I'm mature enough to deal with those challenges and performances. Because it's yeah, you're in a live show, you can't stop. Let me do that over again. Can I have a second chance? Or like let me I can't. You don't have those uh, um, ability to fix things. I need to tweak this. You got to be able to play live. You got to keep it whatever you're playing steady and
Yeah.
consistent. It's all about
Well,
it's all about building your chops and your calluses. You
yeah.
you you have to be able to learn the language so that you can really build your vocabulary and speak it fluently.
Well, you can certainly walk the talk for sure.
I'm
Kid,
still I'm still trying, man.
no, I love that you're still passionate about what you do. We are so fortunate that you're part of SUU, especially in the MMMT program. So thank you for your time today. And thank you for being a part of SUU. So
My pleasure. It's been great working with all of you, especially all the faces I see on here. It's just been great. Everyone's so nice and so great to work with. I can't even. I have no bad things to even think of. It's just amazing. Thanks, guys.
thank you so much. We'll see you later.
All right, bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Hey, one last thing. Um, Please join us, our LinkedIn, SUU Grad Online LinkedIn page. We're doing swag giveaways once a month. We gave away 2 sweatshirts this last month. So if you join SUU Grad Online and LinkedIn group, you'll be eligible for a swag gift. So please join that. All right. Thanks, everybody. Next week, we have Angela Trejo, who is an engineer and an entrepreneur. And she has a fascinating story. And she's just joined the New York Times bestseller list. Is that right, Brenda? Yeah. So she'll be really interesting from a background and her what she's done in her career so far. So join us next week with Angela at 12 o'clock. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the weather. Bye-bye.